Hey, welcome to the Cheap Air Gunner channel. It's Cherokee Steve. I am checking back in because I've been doing more shooting, more practicing. As you probably have guessed, it's with the 2400 KT. What I'm going to refer to this as from now on is the KT HPA. It's something I have just become kind of addicted to. Really am so super happy with the HPA kit and how everything has turned out. But getting back to what I've been doing, as far as the shooting I've done today, I've been experimenting with different holes on the rifle, trying to come up with a predictable trigger break. One of the things that I have tried, it's more than one thing, but it seems to work pretty well for me anyway. Number one, I'm super glad I added the Talon grip patch onto the bottle. This is where I grip it with my front hand, and I grip it pretty firmly. I pretty much drive the back of the shoulder stock into my shoulder. Now, this is something I've done with a super heavy Hatsan Springer that I used to use, but it really gives a nice steady hold to the gun. The other thing that I do, and this is directly, I came up trying this with this particular gun because it's something I do all the time when I'm shooting my Crosman M4 177. There is quite a bit of blowback, and the bolt itself and the bolt mechanism on the M4 is not the best. There's a lot of slop and a lot of play in it. It's the reason why, if you go back and you check out the video I did on modifying that particular gun, I added a thumb rest attachment. Actually added it directly onto the bolt lever, which is all plastic on the M4. But one of the things that I do to prevent blowback and keep a nice closed position on the bolt itself is when I'm firing, I keep my thumb on the bolt. On this particular gun, I keep a forward pressure on the bolt as I do with the M4. The M4 just goes straight forward and straight back. There's no drop down to the bolt like there is on a closed position on the KT HPA. But I keep pressure down and forward on the bolt. And I kind of increase that forward pressure as I am pulling back on the trigger. And that has helped me find a much more consistent trigger break position. So it's a combination of firm grip with the front hand, kind of driving back this shoulder stock into my shoulder, forward and downward pressure on the bolt with my thumb on my right hand, my trigger hand, and increasing that forward pressure as I'm pulling back with my index finger. The other thing I've found that works, I've talked about this before, as far as the position of the dot sight in relationship to the top rail on the shoulder stock, which doesn't really seem to work together too good. But what I found is I drive my chin into the top rail of the shoulder stock, and all of this pressure in combination between my chin and both of my hands really seem to give a steady hold to the gun. Now what I just did, I saw the gun was at 14 MPa as far as the valve pressure goes. 15 MPa is the upper limit, but I decided not to top it off. I would just start with the 14 MPa and see how many shots I could get where it would take me from 14 MPa down to 10 MPa. And I was writing down velocities as I shot over the Crony. I was also shooting for accuracy. I got off a 15-shot group. That's what it took to take the gun from 14 MPa in the valve down to 10 MPa in the valve. The first shot being the fastest shot, the last shot being the slowest shot. But the first shot was at a high of 811 feet per second. I did all of this shooting with those Falcon pellets, which are 13.43 grain pellet. Shape-wise and consistency-wise, which they seem to be a very consistent pellet. It's one of the few 22 caliber pellets that I have in a tin that has a quantity of 500. Seem to be on par, in my opinion, with JSB pellets. The one thing I did notice is out of all the pellets that I have, not slugs, pellets, 177, 22 caliber, and 25 caliber, the caliber that I have the least amount of selection of pellets in is 22. I have a ton in 177 and a ton in 25. So I'm going to be keeping my eye open for some good prices in different types of 22 caliber pellets to do some more testing. The low, the last shot, the 15th shot, went down to 748. Now I'm pretty pleased with that deviation, going from a little bit over 800 down to right about 750, to only lose 50 feet per second over the course of 15 shots. As I said, that's pretty good. And the one thing it seemed to coincide with was I had pretty much no drop whatsoever in my shooting, in my target shooting. And of course, that's only at 10 yards that I have down here in my basement, but no noticeable drop off whatsoever. The other technique that I tried at one point, let me check my notes. The 6th shot that I took, velocity-wise, it went from 811, this is in order, down to 800, back up to 802, down to 791, down to 781. And I tried something at this point. I don't know exactly why. It seemed to me to be worth trying, but what I did was I cocked the gun. At this point, I'm taking my 6th shot, and I cocked the gun back, and before I loaded the pellet, I backed off the power adjuster and then re-screwed it in to, there was noticeably a lot of resistance that I would really have to force turning the power adjuster in anymore. Backed it off, screwed it back in to that point I just said, and then loaded a pellet and took a shot. The next shot, after having shot at 781 feet per second, jumped up to 791 feet per second. So with obviously a drop in air that's in the valve between those two shots, I got a higher velocity just doing what I just mentioned with the power adjuster. I went ahead, and did not do that, but continued shooting. 791, the next shot dropped down to 780. The next shot was at 778, a drop but not a very big one. The next shot was at 770. Then I decided to do the same technique with the power adjuster that I already talked about. Cocked the gun, backed off the power adjuster, screwed it back in till it was making very firm contact with the spring guide that I have installed on the hammer spring. That's actually what the power adjuster is making contact with, not directly with the spring, but a guide I machined that sits inside the ID of the spring. But after backing off the power adjuster, screwing it back in, and taking a shot, it jumped up. The previous shot was at 770 feet per second, and it went up to 775. The next two shots I took without doing anything to the power adjuster were drops, 775, down to 766, down to 744. Backing off the power adjuster after cocking the gun, screwing it back in to a very firm position, and the velocity jumped up from 744 up to 756. So I don't know if it's from depressurizing the spring, decompressing is what I should say, decompressing the spring and recompressing it kind of resets the spring to give a more powerful push on the hammer, or if it's something else. If there's something else based on my description of what I'm doing with the power adjuster that somebody out there can better explain it to me, it leads to an increase in velocity. That I'm, at this point, personally chalking it up to a decompression of the spring, and recompressing it provides it with more power. Pretty interesting, I thought. Let me get to the accuracy at this point. This is a target I've used many times for many different things, including partially sighting in the dot sight on my KT-HPA. I've also used it to compare accuracy of my 2289 with the 1322 that I did the giveaway on. But over the middle, I posted a shoot and see sticker. Everything that you see on that shoot and see sticker was the 15 shots that I took, with the exception of this one low shot. Everything caused a giant touching hole. So, again, it's only at 10 yards, but it definitely seems to be showing that working on my technique, coming up with different pressures of holding the gun and how I am driving the gun or the bolt in different directions upon shooting has really come forward for me as an improvement in accuracy. So that's what I've been doing today. Just wanted to post up a video about all of that. And thanks for checking it out. If I come up with any more modifications or add-ons or shooting techniques, I will definitely update on what I've done and or what I've added. So, thanks for checking it out. Stay safe. Shoot safe.